timeline. The timeline panel has a few options we need to learn about. We'll start with the time code on the top corner that displays the current time our time indicator is placed on. By default, this one is set to show time in frames per seconds, minutes, and hours. But we can change it to frame count by pressing Command-Control and clicking on it. The search bar is not just for finding files or layers by name, but also for finding properties and displaying them. For example, if we want to show the path property of these 4 layers, we just need to select them and then type path. And as you can see, After Effects will quickly only display these parameters. This works for all other effect parameters as well. The flowchart button allows us to see a tree branch structure of our project with all the nested compositions. The Shy switch hides all layers that have the Shy parameter activated, making it easier to manage our layers. The frame blending option, we won't use this for our projects. The motion blur toggle turns the preview visibility of the motion blur effect on or off for the layers that have this parameter selected. The graph editor changes how we view our timeline to edit our keyframe interpolation in a graph view. This is quite an advanced option that we won't touch on for now. Moving on to the next row, we have toggles for layer visibility, audio on or off, solo layer, and lock layer. These options are straightforward and do exactly as they say. The drop-down arrow allows us to display all the properties that our layers have, depending on the type of layer and the effects we apply. This might show a few different options, but the most common ones we'll work with are position, scale, rotation, and opacity. The keyboard shortcuts for these properties are accessed by pressing P for position, S for scale, R for rotation, and T for opacity. Next, we have the Shy toggle option for our layers. All layers that have this icon in the pressed position like this will be hidden once we activate the Shy toggle on the top bar. The continuous rasterize option works in different ways, and we'll touch on this at a later time. For now, all you need to know is that vector layers that have this option activated can be scaled without losing quality or resolution. All the next icon options won't be needed for now, except for the motion blur toggle option for the layers. This tells After Effects that you want that layer to have motion blur applied when you enable it on the top navigation bar. The Mode drop-down menu gives us access to the different blending modes that you might be familiar with from Illustrator and Photoshop. The next option is called Preserve Underlying Transparency. If we have a layer at the bottom that has any transparency, like this text layer, and we place an image on top of it and activate the underlying transparency option, the alpha channel of the layer at the bottom will now mask the layer. The next parameter is for track mats. This is an advanced option that we'll touch on more in Module 4. The spiral is called the Pick Whip tool and is one you'll use a lot as it allows us to parent a layer to another and create a relationship. You can see who the layer is parented to in the box on the right. What this allows us to do is to have a layer use all the keyframe parameters of another layer, like the position, scale, and rotation, while still being able to animate the original layer's individual parameters. You'll see that pick whips are also available for layer parameters. We won't go into much depth on these as they are a bit more advanced because they start delving into expressions, which are coded animation parameters. All the way to the right, we have the Marker tool. We can create a place marker in our composition by selecting and dragging it to a specific place on our timeline. This will create a marker that we can move by clicking and dragging, and we can also rename and color code it by double-clicking on it. Finally, we have our composition timeline. You'll be working here the most. This is where we can place keyframes on layers and can view these layers across the time allocated to our composition. Types of layers. There are a few different types of layers that we can work with in After Effects, and each one of them has their own uses and parameters. For now, we'll focus on the ones that we'll be using the most. To locate and create new layers, you can go to Layer, New, and select the one you want. Text layers. As its name suggests, this layer can contain text. It can be added in a few ways. The first one we've already seen, and the second is by selecting the Text tool or by using the shortcut Command or Control and T on our keyboard. Once we are in the Text tool mode, we can either click to create a position for our text or click and drag to create a text box. Text layers are red on our timeline to make them easy to identify. Solids. Solids are solid color layers that are placed on our comps and are mostly used to apply effects to or cut from using masks. To add a solid, go to Layer, New, Solid, or press Command, Control, and Y on your keyboard. When you add a solid to a comp, it will also be added to a folder called Solids in your project panel. Be careful when editing the values or erasing solids in that folder, as they will be modified or erased on any comp that you have placed them in. If you want to edit a solid's property in a composition, you can select the solid on your timeline and click Command Control plus Shift and Y. This will not edit the overall value in the panel, but it will create a new solid. Null objects. A null object is a transparent layer that can be used to drive the movement of other layers by parenting them to these nulls. These objects are quite helpful when trying to move or change the size of objects that are already animated without losing or adding new keyframes, like in the following example where we have a layer that already has an animated path and a scale parameter. If we parent it to a null object using the pick whip, we can move, rotate, and resize the layer without losing or changing any existing animation properties. You can create null objects by going to Layer, New, Null Object, or by pressing Command Control plus Alt, Shift, and Y. Shape layers. These are vector objects inside After Effects. We can create them by deselecting every other layer and then using our Shape Layer tool and by dragging any shape we select. We can also use the Pen tool, but again, we need to have no layer selected in order for this to work. Adjustment layer. Adjustment layers are transparent layers created to add effects to them, and then having all layers below them be affected by the adjustment layer effects. Just remember this layer also has a bounding box, and if moved around or masked, the effect will only show inside those boundaries or the boundaries of the mask. To add an adjustment layer, go to Layer, New, Adjustment Layer, or press Command Control, Alt, and Y. Conclusion. Knowing and understanding the interface of After Effects is really important. When we start working on a project, it is easier if we know what each panel does and what options we have to use them. Understanding the different types of layers in After Effects is quite useful, as it allows us to achieve different results and make our process even easier if we know when and how to use them. In the next lessons, we'll learn how to use the interface in our projects and start creating keyframes for animation.